Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. Let me tell you, the dopamine, it's flowing.
I am damn excited. Damn excited.
That's a terrible drum roll.
Oh! Boy, how you doing, man? Patrick.
Will Sterling.
Yeah.
Super Bowl champion, two-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
And we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome. This is the first ever edition of Freaky Friday here on the Arrowhead Addict channel. I'm Adam Best, joined as always by Sterling Holmes. Last night was transcendent for those of us who are committed to the project of protecting our billion-dollar quarterback. Very exciting night. The Chiefs actually traded back, but they stayed in the first round. They got a left tackle. They got someone that we didn't even think would possibly be there at 32. Sterling, I know you have some different thoughts, and we're going to get into it, but are you ready? Are you psyched for day 2 of the draft?
Oh, I'm thrilled. And I really, really hope that Josh Simmons is everything we want him to be. We'll get into the entire conversation about it, but I hope the best for him. I will find a way. I was, doing everything I could to talk myself into why this pick is going to work. But yeah, man, this is where I think the fun starts to happen. 2 third-rounders for Kansas City. They picked up that 5th, trading back with the Eagles. That was, I think, actually a pretty large move for only moving back 1 draft pick. A little befuddled why the Eagles did it. I have some thoughts there on why they did it and the reason why they had to go through with that, actually. But the 5th rounder, I think, can be used as an ammunition if they want to trade up. A lot of great names still on the board. So, yeah, I think today is about to be a real fun draft for KC.
Before we jump into business and start cooking, I just want to give producer Richard some props for last night. He was handling this crazy Hollywood Squares Brady Bunch thing we had going on with like 9 different people at once. Very tough to do, but Richard always makes it look easy, always makes us look good, or as good as someone can make degenerates like us look. So before we dive into reflecting on Josh Simmons and setting the table for day 2, we've got a little bit of business to take care of.
Oh, yeah, baby. Do you ever watch sports and think, how could myself get into the game? Oh, you're so stupid. There's one easy way, and that's with Underdog Fantasy. Finally, a way to make picks on sports without leaving the house. Doesn't matter. You're right there in Missouri right now. Oh no, what am I going to do? What do I want to do? I want to have some fun. You go to Underdog, baby. Underdog. It's right there waiting for you. One of the leading sports apps, and you can play right now in your state. Super easy, higher or lower on stats, strikeouts, points scored, a lot more. NBA playoffs going on right now. Major League Baseball going on right now. Super easy, higher or lower. You could stick with all baseball. You can mix and match across other sports, and you can play with as little as $1. Plus, if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. All with your sports knowledge. I'm a huge fan of Underdog. I rock it myself. I play it. Love the higher, lower options. Been doing it a lot for NBA. I think it's great for NBA. Higher, lower as well in Major League Baseball. Love doing it with the strikeouts. A lot of times with Cole Reagans. Did not do great last time around when Reagans went out in the 3rd inning because he was getting shelled. Doesn't matter, though, because I had a lot of fun. It keeps you entertained. And plus, you don't always have to get every single one right. That's right. There's a lot of fun ways you can play and have some fun on Underdog. So if you use code Arrowhead Addict, that's what we want you to do. That's the best thing you can do to help us. Download the Underdog app and sign up using promo code Arrowhead Addict to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make that first deposit. So join in on the fun when you sign up with promo code Arrowhead Addict and claim your special offer today and get to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon first deposit. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona. President State where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Consortium play. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambler.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 55342. In New York, 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778 Hope and Y or text Hope and Y.
Ooh, that was a Matthew Golden level 40, a Maxwell Hairston level 40. I mean, that was blazing. That was blazing. So we're going to get into Josh Simmons here. If you want, if this isn't enough for you when we get done, you can always check out either the YouTube video from last night on the Arrowhead Addict channel, or we uploaded it as a podcast on Spotify and Apple. And you can just fast forward if you don't want to listen to the whole thing. I don't know if it's the last hour or so, but we really chopped it up and gave, kind of spilled our guts about the Josh Simmons pick. And for me, I'm wearing this Eternal Sunshine shirt for a reason. I am choosing to make myself forget all the blunders at left tackle. Lucas Niang, I'm not holding on to that. I'm not holding on to Wanye Morris. I'm not holding on to Kingsley Suamataia. I am glass half full, Mr. Glass half full today. So let's run it down. Left tackle Josh Simmons out of Ohio State, 6'4", 317 pounds, 34-inch arms. He hits that Andy Heck threshold. He transferred from San Diego State a couple years ago. He was an Aztec. Good as a sophomore at Ohio State. Otherworldly as a junior, but only through 5 games. And in those 5 games, all blowout. So the level of competition wasn't there, but he looked like a top 10 pick. And he looked pretty good in that limited action, I think in game 6 against Oregon. So even with the patella injury, he was still looking like this time yesterday, in my opinion, a top 20 pick. I thought the Chiefs, I even did my last mock, the Chiefs were going to have to go up to 21 with the Steelers, do a trade with Pittsburgh to get Josh Simmons. So, and his comps, more athletic version of Christian Darrisaw and David Bakhtiari. Now, that's not hyperbole. That is legitimate stuff. And he somehow slid to 32. I think it's as much maturity concerns and some bad interviews as the patella injury. Now, why is that not as important in Kansas City? Because you have the culture. You have Andy Reid, you have Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, Steve Spagnuolo. That's just not going to fly in Kansas City. I liked how he introduced himself, not as a left tackle, but as a quarterback protector. I'm sure he's going to be good in the running game, and that's fine and dandy, but that is not why he's being brought to Kansas City. He's being brought to Kansas City to keep 15 pristine. So somehow slid to 32. And the best part about it, you mentioned this, the Chiefs scoop up pick 164 in the 5th round. They didn't have a 5th rounder, I believe, to move back 1 spot. The Eagles got a hell of a player in the deal, but we're not worried about that. We're doing what's best for our franchise. I'm over the moon. Yesterday, I had my champagne tier of first-round picks, first-round possibilities. Only 4 names that if any of those guys get picked, I'm popping the figurative bubbly. Those names in order: Walter Nolan, Josh Simmons, Derek Harmon, Trevion Henderson. We got the number 2 target on my board. Again, I'm over the moon. I'm pumped. I think left tackle is such an important position that if this guy comes out as a day 1 awesome starter and you light $30 million on Jalen Moore on fire, so be it. I don't mind an over allocation of resources at this position. I've said enough. I'm going to shut up and hand the floor to Sterling.
Yeah, first and foremost, let's get into the trade really quickly before I get into the real thoughts on Simmons, because I think they do roll hand in hand at least a little bit. The Chiefs did not have a 5th or 6th round draft pick. They were looking to acquire something there and even potentially use that to move up in the 3rd or even in the 2nd round. So they moved with the Eagles. Now, the Eagles, you're saying, well, why would they only move up 1 spot, and why would it be Kansas City? Now, why would they give up a 5th round to only move up 1 spot, by the way? Well, the Eagles had 3 5th round draft picks. They were flush. They were plush with it. Those guys probably aren't making the roster to begin with. Second thing is, it sounded like they'd already been in conversations for a while in this draft, right? So what happens basically is you go, okay, so if so-and-so was still there at this particular pick. We're going to trade with you. You don't talk with any other teams. This is the deal. We'll give you a 5th rounder. Well, okay. The Eagles are probably sitting there going, well, shoot, we probably don't need to give up a 5th rounder anymore because of look who's ahead of us. But you may have already promised something in advance, and that's why the Chiefs were not in talks with other teams. Again, some hypotheticals, but some of this is how it can actually be laid out. A lot of this is, I was laughing today on air, it's a lot of handshake agreements. Because one, I'm sitting here going, what's stopping someone from just bleeping over the other GM, right? Because we heard today that Brett Veach, when he was talking to Howie, he said, you don't have to tell me who you're taking, just offense, defense. And Howie said defense. And so then he goes, okay, that's fine. We're going offense, so it doesn't matter for us. We'll trade that pick with you. Okay? So pretty simple. You have to have a lot of trust there. You have to have a lot of trust because, the Chiefs tried doing that with Dallas, the rumors were, a few years ago for Mozzie Smith. They said defense. Dallas said no, thank you, because they thought they were going after the same guy. Good thing the Chiefs didn't get Smith because he's been brutal. Beside the point, though, you got to be honest, because if you're not, no one is going to trade with you ever again. I would imagine the owners, they would bleep each other over all the time given the chance. But the GMs, they can't because you have to work with these guys throughout the season and throughout your entire tenure. So I think that's something to at least monitor. I do like the fact that Chiefs were able to get a draft pick and get their guy.
One thought on the trade before you move on. I find it curious that San Francisco and Buffalo and Philly and the Chiefs and the Ravens, like the Chiefs always have to trade with these other contenders because these other contenders have the right philosophy. As long as we get better, we don't give a shit who we're dealing with. But I do think a lot of other teams are afraid to deal with not only the Chiefs, but the Eagles. I mean, I think a lot of teams are like, well, we don't want to hand Howie Roseman his next great player. So I think maybe that's why the Chiefs are like, hey, we'll step in and take the 5th.
The contender tier is one that is not scared. The pretender tier is one that is trying to say, we're not trading with them because we're trying to get better than them, or we don't want to make them better. That means you're scared. You're a pretender. You're not a contender. So that aside, I love that they were able to get a 5th round draft pick and get the guy that they wanted. Number 2, I like Simmons over Connerly. Okay. If you were going to get a tackle, I did like Simmons over Connerly personally. I think he fits the Chiefs offense better. I think it makes sense. He can sit a year if need be, and you don't have to have him plug and play right now. I do wonder if Connerly is going to end up playing right tackle for Washington because they do have Laramie Tunsil, right? So there's a chance that Connerly actually ends up being right tackle. Now, some of my concerns here. Why did Washington pass up on Josh Simmons? Right? Because I think almost everyone had Simmons ahead of Connerly. The only thing I can think of is because they're going to have Connerly play right tackle and they need him right now. Well, if the medicals are as good as the Chiefs have been saying, well, it sounds like Simmons could play this year. It also sounds like if it were up to me, you could probably play him at right tackle too. If you're already going to move another left tackle to right tackle, what's the big difference? So that is a little bit of a concern for me. What it does come down to for me, the risk of Josh Simmons is so vast that I personally would not have gone that route. It's not just the injury. It's the fact that the Chiefs can also not draft and develop left tackles. Now, they've not drafted one this early. It's been 2nd round, 3rd round, and 3rd round. Lucas, Wanye, Kingsley. So what I'm sitting back here saying is, how is this going to be any different? If he struggles in 2 games and you pull him, or all of a sudden you're saying now he's a guard. If he plays in 2 games and then you try the next year to draft a replacement, which they basically did from Lucas to Wanye to there's a couple years in between Lucas and Wanye, and then into Kingsley. Well, if you give him no time, what are we doing here? We all know tackle is one of the hardest spots to develop in the NFL and probably takes the longest for these guys to really get good. Okay? So that's a philosophical difference here. When it comes to Josh Simmons himself, can he get back to that? Well, they talked about the medicals. I love that Rick Burkholder came into that meeting going, I don't know, man. He's got a patellar injury. I'm very leery. And then he talked about it. Well, the surgery went great. And people might say, well, shouldn't the surgery always go great? It's different between you and myself and a professional athlete. Okay. Remember Hollywood Brown when he had the injury and they tried to let it heal on its own, but then he had that minor issue because it was like a millimeter off. For you and me, we're not getting surgery on that. It doesn't matter. We're fine. But if you are a professional athlete and getting tackled by 300-pound dudes, well, that's a different situation. Okay. So when they're talking about the patellar surgery and how it was a success for Josh Simmons, they said it came back perfectly in place. We were talking today on radio with a couple of medical folks, and a lot of times, if it's a millimeter up, millimeter down, you either lose your torque or you lose your power, or your mobility. Well, if it's perfect, then he can potentially get back to what he once was. Again, there's still a lot of concern here. How many players have come back from torn patellars and been successful? We know the ones that haven't. Kalichi Osamale for Kansas City. Lucas Niang for Kansas City. Martinez Rankin for Kansas City. That's 3 guys in Kansas City who have had those injuries and for the most part have not played a single snap post-injury. That is concerning. End of the day, the odds of getting a potential franchise tackle at 31 or 32 in this case are pretty much impossible. With the draft having a lot of bulk in the 2nd and 3rd round, I can understand the thought process of this is the time that maybe it doesn't work. But we got to try. We got to try, and quite frankly, we at least have a contingency plan for this year in place. We have Jalen Moore. We have Juwan Taylor. Worst comes to worst, we have Wanya Morris as a swing guy. So at least you have a contingency plan. I would have liked Luther Burden III. I hate wasting the last year of Travis Kelce without another weapon. Some of these guys like Chris Jones are getting older. I get that. I would have gone to LB3 personally. But I can talk myself into why this might work. The Chiefs were very, very enthusiastic about the process of Josh Simmons.
And I know a lot of people wanted Luther Burden III there. We'll see how precipitous of a drop he has today. If he goes right off the board, maybe that's a guy that the Chiefs could have or should have taken. If he slides like, say, A.D. Mitchell did last year, well, the red flags start to become a little bit more alarming. Or maybe even the Chiefs have a chance to kind of jump back up and pick him themselves if he slides into the 40s or 50s or whatever. I don't think that's going to happen. You never know. I will say this. Luther Burden III is a rare player, a special player with the ball in his hands. But he's not as rare as finding a all-pro potential true left tackle at 32. It's going to be harder for the Chiefs to find a shot at another Josh Simmons than it will be at another Luther Burden. I think that is impossible to argue.
100%. My one pushback, and I've seen it a lot in the chat. I'm not trying to, necessarily argue with anyone. I just want to give the pushback of when everyone goes, well, if he was healthy, he was going to be a top 10 pick or a potential all-pro before the injury. No, we know that. Justin Ross was going to be a first-round draft pick too before all the injuries, but injuries happen. I just think that this injury is one that is so unknown at this point. It's not an ACL. Hell, it's not even an Achilles. A patellar injury, for the most part, I think the stat was 45% or 55% don't ever play another snap of football. A lot of times, if you have a patellar injury like this, a lot of times you're just done. A lot of times, I believe it's 2.5 years is the average shelf life post-injury from a patellar injury. That's the NFL average. Now, again, there are some situations. If you're 32 years old and this happens, well, of course, you're done. He's young enough. We're all hoping that his youth, the fact that the surgery supposedly went perfectly, and that the Chiefs medicals, who have been a little more in the past, lenient maybe than other organizations, but the Chiefs have been rewarded for it. Because Rasheed had that ankle injury. They didn't care. That was a bigger one. I don't think people always bring that one up. That's a different one. Trey Smith obviously had that issue in the draft in the 6th, but his 6th round's different than the 1st. You can take a flyer in the 6th. No one's going to care. First round's a little different. Again, I'm not saying, and again, everyone's going, have you seen this tape? Yes, pre-injury. I'm not arguing with the talent that was before the injury, guys. Like, I 100% agree. Pre-injury, Josh Simmons, phenomenal player. I would be bleeping myself right now. I couldn't believe it. Post-injury, I just have a plethora of concerns. They were alleviated a little bit by, Veach and Burkholder and all the comments post. But I don't want to just be a homer and just blindly believe everything. Come on. What kind of show is that? What kind of show is that if I disagree and say everything's perfect? Not a fun one.
Okay, so stream of consciousness rebuttal here. Not just a rebuttal, but just following up on all the things you were saying. First off, not only great at evaluations, and you're right, their risk tolerance is a little higher than other franchises when it comes to injury. But if you look at guys like Jerick McKinnon and guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, could not stay healthy on other franchises. The Chiefs, Sammy Watkins as well. The Chiefs squeezed they kept Sammy Watkins healthy for a playoff run. That is a miracle. That is a miracle. I think. Now they shouldn't have re-signed him because that was expecting too much of Rick Burkholder. But my point is that they have kept guys healthier than other franchises could keep them. Your thought about the coulda, woulda, shoulda. Well, Luther Burden, if he repeats his sophomore season, maybe he's a top 15 pick because he kind of
top 5.
He bombed this past season, and it's not all his fault. I mean, sometimes you stick around too long and you're in a worse offense and just your situation changes and it actually hurts you staying in school. And I think that's what happened. So if we're playing the woulda, coulda, shoulda game, that is something else to consider. But the tape is gorgeous. He looks like an NBA power forward sliding around out there. The athleticism is off the charts. I'm scared too, a little bit, but just the juice is worth the squeeze. I don't know where else the Chiefs were going to get a shot at a true franchise left tackle like this because it wasn't going to happen in free agency. Trent Williams was pretty old when they got the shot at him. And my brother brought up a great point here. Are you betting on a short-term left tackle solution? No, you're not. The Chiefs don't think 1 year at a time. They're not thinking, why would we take this guy if he sits the bench this year? They're thinking long-term because they can afford to, where most franchises can't, because Brett Veach, job security. Andy Reid, job security. Even Andy Heck, job security. What are they betting on here? They're betting on a guy that can retire as Patrick Mahomes' blind side protector, possibly. A decade together. That is worth the big swing, in my opinion.
I do like what Patrick said. I agree with the argument if we would have traded up and lost assets to get Simmons, but you move back and you pick up a draft pick and then you still get him. That makes a lot of sense. And the one thing I will say again, I'm on record right here. I think this pick, I'm whelmed. This pick is fine. Like it's okay. I'm not thrilled. I've talked myself into it being, and I get the reason why as well of you can get a wide receiver, a running back, I think even a defensive tackler edge in the second, third, fourth round. Who could potentially be a game changer, might be a little strong, but at least a difference maker. You ain't getting a potential left tackle in that second, third, fourth round. That's going to be what Josh Simmons could be, right? Like the drop off from Travion Henderson to, let's say, at 31, which would have had to been, versus let's say Devin Neal at even 95. At 95. Okay. Well, what's a drop off between Josh Simmons at 31 versus a different tackle?
Charles Grant.
Yeah. So I guess that's more or less where I get the understanding from, where this can still be a great draft, even if your first round draft pick has a 50-50 shot of being either a Pro Bowler or out of the NFL in 2 years. Like, again, I just don't know if people have done and understood that patellar injuries have mostly been a death sentence in professional football.
When you unwrap your presents on Christmas morning as a kid, you don't remind yourself that a year or two you might not like this toy. You get excited about it. I'm choosing to unwrap the present and celebrate. Those are our thoughts on Josh Simmons. Sterling, let's do an exercise here just to kind of try to get a feel for the draft, the shape of the draft so far, rapid fire style, maybe pausing to reflect on rivals or key moments. Just thumbs up, thumbs down, filibuster. We're going to run through the entire first round, fast, and set the table.
Yeah, very quick. I want to hit this one because I like this question from Lauren Shanks. Always appreciate you being here. Says, Sterling, were you more upset with the Worthy move last year, with the move up last year for Worthy instead of drafting Ladd McConkey? Yeah, I didn't love the trade up, but with the way Xavier Worthy's played, no, I think both have been great, right? Ladd McConkey's basically been wide receiver 1 for the Chargers as a rookie. He was phenomenal last year. But now we know everything we know. I'm not mad. Plus, I do understand Ladd McConkey basically played the Rashee Rice role, I think, in this offense. Xavier Worthy was a completely different flavor. I didn't necessarily love the trade up at the time, but the results have been the results. They've been outstanding. No, I'm not going to argue about that. Right now, if you ask me in 2020, heading into the 2025 season, who would I rather have? I think I'd probably say Xavier Worthy. Although I do think Ladd McConkey is still a phenomenal player.
Scheme fit.
Yeah.
And we just don't know on draft night. Like Price pointed out last evening, a year ago, I was pounding the table for defensive tackle Johnny Newton. And we didn't know until after the draft that he had a foot injury. And that's why he slid. So we don't have all the information sometimes. She's felt good about Xavier Worthy. I was a little skeptical as well. That BMI usually is not one that works out in the NFL, but the times they are changing, right? These little guys make it more often than they used to now. Let's dive in with pick 1 by the Tennessee Titans. Cam Ward, thumbs up, thumbs down, more to say.
Makes sense. I don't think Cam Ward's going to be great, but it makes sense because you have to take a shot. So I understand it.
They had to do it.
Yep.
They had to do it. And I think he's the one quarterback who you can actually look at the traits, and he hasn't even been playing football that long, really. And like, I think he was a wishbone quarterback in high school and kind of really was not a highly recruited guy. So he had to really scratch and claw to make his way here. I like that. I see a little bit of Jordan Love in him. So I like the pick. Number 2, I love this pick by James Gladstone. Coming in, the young Doogie Howser, general manager of the Jacksonville Jaguars, just really paying tribute to his mentor, Les Snead of the Los Angeles Rams, and saying F them picks. But Trevor Lawrence really hasn't gotten the best shot. You know what I mean? Like, he has underwhelmed as someone who was supposed to be generational, but I don't think Jacksonville as a franchise, with the coaches, with the draft picks, I mean, look at some of the guys they've picked. Trayvon Walker, they look at who their coaches have been. Now they're giving him no excuses. He has Brian Thomas, he has Travis Hunter, and you say, my God, the draft capital to move up and get one player, that's a lot. But he's not one player. He's 2. He's 2 players. He's going to be potentially like an all-pro receiver who comes in on 3rd down and tries to shut down Nico Collins. I think it's worth it. I like it for Jacksonville. And I have to thank the Jaguars from preventing Travis Hunter from going to the purgatory that is the Cleveland Browns. Sorry, Patrick, I had to do it. Nobody wants Travis Hunter in Cleveland. That's the least sexy, like, choose your own adventure possibility of the night.
By the way, I love the pick for Jacksonville, but I think he plays almost entirely on defense while he plays a smattering of offense. I think because it's way easier to play 100% defense and then have a subset in your offensive game plan for him than the complete opposite. So I think he'll be a potential Pro Bowl defensive back. I think he'll be about an 800-yard receiver on offense, but that's still ridiculous to get out of one player.
Number 3, Abdul Carter. I mean, just thumbs way up. They're throwing him in there with Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau. That is scary. What else can we say, right? Number 4, Will Campbell, LSU, offensive tackle to the Patriots.
It was fine. I think Mimbu's the better player, but they need a left tackle, not a right tackle. So I get it. Again, I think Mimbu is the best tackle in this draft. The issue is he's a right tackle. So you need a left. If you need a left, you go Will Campbell.
Quick thought on the left tackle, right tackle thing. We didn't hit it earlier. Josh Simmons did play some right tackle in high school. There's just an ongoing discussion about how easy or how difficult it is to play one side and flip to the other. Sometimes I think we get a little too caught up in that. I do think Josh Simmons, potentially, if Juwan Taylor flat out stinks and Jalen Moore is awesome and Josh Simmons is awesome this season, maybe you see one of those guys at right tackle. But moving on, number 5, Mason Graham, Michigan, to the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah. Him and Myles Garrett. Wow. That'll be fun to watch.
For me, it's just fine. He's not the most awe-inspiring. Most years, he's not a top 5 pick. That's the way I'd put it. Nothing against him as the player. I just think, but they did pick up the extra draft capital moving back. Number 6, this is one of the picks we really want to dig into. Ashton Jeanty, superstar running back from Boise State, generational talent or near generational talent to the Raiders. Him and Brock Bowers, man, can you make the argument that 2 of the top 10 players in college football from the past 5 years are now in Vegas?
Yeah, I like this move for Vegas. I know some people who will make fun of the Raiders for drafting a running back, but this is what they want to do. I'm not saying the Raiders are going to be good. They have so many issues still. They're just trying to get back to respectability, right? They're almost trying to, when the Chiefs went out and got Matt Castle, right? And they were just like, can we just go 10-6? Can we go 9-7? Can we stop being the butt of everyone's joke? Can we have some stability here? That's almost what I think the Raiders are trying to, or maybe it's even when they brought in, the first year of Andy Reid with Alex Smith. It's like, can we just find some stability? We're probably not going to win a Super Bowl, but can we at least try and make the playoffs or do something? Bringing in Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, and I like what they're doing. I don't think they're going to be great, but with Ashton Jeanty and Brock Bowers and Pete Carroll, they're at least building something till you can no longer be like, that's an easy win, and it's making it harder to make fun of.
I like the self-awareness from the Raiders franchise. I didn't like a few years back from their perspective when they brought in Devontae Adams and they thought they were a contender and they kind of were masquerading as like, we're going to compete. Right now, they know that Geno Smith is a bridge quarterback. I think he's a very good bridge quarterback, but the upside with him is 10th best quarterback in the league if he really brings it that season, which I think allows you to set the stage for your next quarterback and a more competitive era of Raiders football. They know they're not going to compete with the Chiefs, go from league laughing stock to beating the Chiefs in the AFC West in one season. This is a multi-season project. They're taking it the right way. And yeah, I'm a little afraid of Jeanty and Bowers both wearing the silver and black. At the same time, the Raiders being so pathetic is kind of sad. Every great story, every great hero needs a villain. If we're Batman, they've traditionally been the Joker. So maybe this will be a little fun. Number 7, your guy, tackle Armin Mimbu from Missouri, going to the New York Jets. I almost said New Jersey, which is basically what they are.
They are.
How do you feel about Mimbu?
Phenomenal, dude. They should be the Jersey Jets, by the way. It is absolute bull that they're not the Jersey Jets. It sounds better.
Correct.
Too. No, I love this for the Jets. They made the smart decision. Mimbu is phenomenal. I think he's the best tackle in this draft. Yes, he's a right tackle, but it behooves the Jets to give Justin Fields some time because we know what he's like when he has any sort of pressure. It's not going to work. I feel bad to an extent for Mimbu. I mean, man, you're going to the Jets. I don't know how close they are to competing. They have some fun players, though. I'll give them that. They're at least going to be somewhat enjoyable, maybe. Without Rodgers holding them back and holding them down and just being a Buzz Killington, maybe they actually have some sort of reverberation or some sort of, bounce back with the almost pressure that's been lifted off their shoulders after the past 2 years. I love Mimbu, though. So happy for him.
Great player. I think they probably could have used the next guy to complement Garrett Wilson, who just doesn't have any help out there in the perimeter at receiver. And that is Ted McMillan out of Arizona, the wide receiver, going to the Carolina Panthers at number 8. I think this is the right move. We talked about the Chiefs kind of over allocating at left tackle. Well, wide receiver, especially when you have a young quarterback who you've invested significant capital on. And not only do you want him to work out, you want to make sure you gave him a good enough shot to move on and know for sure that he's not the guy. I think Ted McMillan in Carolina allows them to take one long last look at Bryce Young And they can honestly say, hey, we gave this guy the tools he needed to turn out, and he did or didn't. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I still think Bryce Young will have 2 more this year and at least 1 more. The 5th-year option, though, you have to decide at the end of this year, right, for the 3rd year.
This time next year, basically.
Yeah, but yeah, I like that in that regard. Obviously, they got Xavier Legette last year. Is Adam Thielen still there? I cannot remember.
He in a diminished form, but yes, technically he is still there.
But he's a good slot guy. So then you actually do have Xavier
Good
Legette.
mentor.
Yeah, so I actually like this move for the Panthers.
Maybe a tad bit early for the talent level, but it's a weak draft.
Yeah.
Number 9, Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle from Texas. Is he going to play tackle? Is he going to play guard? I think the Saints are saying our new identity, because they don't really have one right now, is going to be the offensive line. I have no problem with the team doing that.
Their identity is, you're right, we don't know, because we don't know if he's a guard or a tackle. So it fits the we don't know game plan.
And a new coach, right? They don't know who their quarterback is. Kind of a mess down there in New Orleans.
Great
number
gumbo,
10. Great gumbo and a lovely city, beautiful city. Number 10. My dog got interested in this one. Must be a tight end fan. Number 10, Colston Loveland, tight end from Michigan, goes to the Bears. That pick made by former Chiefs front office member Ryan Poles. Do you think this is a good fit with the new coaching staff?
Like it, would have loved it if it was Tyler Warren.
See, I like Colston Loveland a little bit better, but here's what I'll say about those two. I think Tyler Warren has probably the higher upside. He's much more scheme dependent, because you got to get him in a place with a coach who knows how to have like a yak-centric offense. And Indianapolis is one of those places. Miami, San Francisco, Kansas City. But Colston Loveland is prototypical tight end. He can fit in anywhere, kind of be a poor man Sam Laporta. I found it interesting that he goes earlier than Brock Bowers. I think that's not saying he's a better player than Brock Bowers. I think this is saying this is a worse class than the previous year.
Sure.
Number 11, Mikael Williams from Georgia, the edge, to the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, Nick Bosa has been out there on an island by himself. They watch the Super Bowl just like everybody else. They know they have to get back to defensive line dominance. You got to like the pick.
Yeah, makes sense.
I have a problem with number 12, Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama. He's the kind of guy you want on your team. He's a leader. I think he said something like his goal is to make other players hate football or something like that. He definitely has that dog in him. He like modeled his game after Trey Smith. And how cool is that these young players are admiring Trey Smith to the extent that they are shaping their game after him. He's just not a very good athlete. He doesn't play a premium position. I know guard is kind of seen as more important as it used to be. Man, CeeDee Lamb seriously needs some help out there. And their running backs are terrible too. I'm really surprised that Jerry Jones, of all people, didn't do the sexy thing here and go with Matthew Golden at receiver or Marion Hampton at running back. But it might show you what's going on in the league with more and more concern about protecting the quarterback.
Yeah, I was surprised it was a guard, but also I'm not, because it's Dallas. Dallas has traditionally spent high draft capital on even the interior offensive line. So they've done a good job identifying talent, and they've hit on a lot of their offensive linemen. So I would have to imagine, just based on their what they see in him, we should probably all agree that Booker's going to be good. Quarterback, wide receiver, any other position, they've had some issues, obviously. But when it comes to offensive line, they've been pretty nails.
They draft well. I don't think their drafting is the problem. I think that they don't want to spend any money in free agency is the problem with the Dallas Cowboys. Number 13, Kenneth Grant out of Michigan, defensive tackle, goes to the Miami Dolphins. I was a little shocked with this pick. I am on my imaginary board that nobody cares about. I would have had Derek Harmon and Walter Nolan ahead of him, but they were terrible against the run. They needed him. I kind of think Miami's irrelevant, and this coaching staff and Tua are on their way out no matter what anyway, so it doesn't even matter, Sterling.
I like Grant a lot. Doesn't matter, but I was hoping Grant was going to fall to 31 to Kansas City. Didn't happen. Obviously, he went at 13. Just switch those numbers around. We're good. He was actually my favorite of the Walter Nolan, Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant. I had Grant number one of those three. So I actually think Miami made a smart decision here.
There really wasn't a consensus on those three guys. I think the thought was that after Mason Graham, those were the next tier. Tyler Warren, we kind of spoke on him going to the Indianapolis Colts, the tight end out of Penn State at number 14. You got to love them giving Anthony Richardson every reason possible to succeed. He probably won't, but hey, there's still a shred of hope, right? Number 15, Jalen Walker, Georgia linebacker, probably going to be a pass rusher, kind of maybe like a Micah Parsons light or Dollar Tree Micah Parsons. Again, we're talking about these teams that have had problems. This is their first pass rusher of two. When you have a glaring problem at a premium position, sometimes just throwing the kitchen sink at it is the way to go. Number 16, we're going to move through the second half a little faster. Walter Nolan, defensive tackle, Ole Miss to the Arizona Cardinals. I thought this was a great pick. You can't good value there. If that guy finds his motor and gets his shit together, he has Chris Jones upside. Number 17, Shamar Stewart, the edge out of Texas A&M, the king of the underwear Olympics, but not the king of production and counting stats on the field. Famously had basically one sack last season. I said last night that I was 50-50 on this guy being a bust. Now I'm like 99% sure because the Bengals have had such an abysmal track record recently of drafting and developing defensive players. It's really, I mean, they scapegoated defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, but come on, he's an incredible defensive coordinator that got a job in like 10 seconds. It was the drafting of the front office and their non-existent scouting department that sunk the defense, not Big Lou.
Yeah.
Sterling's just like, you nailed it. Number 18, Gray Zabel, North Dakota State. I don't know what position he's going to play, probably guard, center. He was a tackle there. Best player at the Senior Bowl. This is something the Seahawks have not wanted to do. Sometimes it's good to see teams take their medicine.
Yeah, this was a smart move.
I want to hear your thoughts on this one because we're talking about an over-allocation of resources and teams stocking the cupboard at premium positions. Number 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State, the wide receiver. Very samesies as Chris Godwin, but maybe they're looking at Chris Godwin being injury prone, Mike Evans on the way out, and they're saying Baker Mayfield is one of these quarterbacks. He's not Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. You have to give him weapons for him to succeed. Is that why they did this?
Yeah, I was shocked. I thought it was for sure going to be defense, and it wasn't. I guess the one thought process I do have on Egbuka personally is he was going to be the best wide receiver at Ohio State, according to Marvin Harrison Jr. and JSN when all those three guys were there, and it was all like, oh, no, man, Egbuka, he's the guy. He's the number one dude.
They always say that, though, because Olave and Garrett Wilson said that about JSN.
And they all three kind of weren't wrong. They've all hit. They've all been great. Yep. So at some point, it's like, okay, it's Ohio State wide receiver is becoming safe. I think he is underrated now at this point. Egbuka was personally. I thought it made more sense to go defense, but if you're going like BPA, I think Egbuka was probably it at that point.
Let's take the next 5 at a time. We're going to focus on the two big AFC West picks here. Primarily at 20, the Denver Broncos select Jahdae Barron, the corner out of Texas. 21, the Steelers take Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle out of Oregon. Love that pick. Didn't go with Shedeur Sanders. I think that was probably smart. 22, the Chargers take Omarion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina. 23, The Packers finally do it. They take a receiver in the first round, Matthew Golden out of Texas. And then 24, a little bit of a surprising pick. People expected the Vikings to trade back. They don't. They take Donovan Jackson, the guard out of Ohio State. Sterling, I want to primarily hear what you think about the Broncos bringing in another top corner to pair with Patrick Surtain. And then Harbaugh and the Chargers and Greg Roman really committing even more so to the running game with Omarion Hampton. What are your thoughts on those two picks?
Yeah, I guess from the Chargers' perspective, first and foremost, I think it makes a ton of sense with Omarion Hampton. I called it beforehand. I said they're going to draft Omarion Hampton. They did. Because they had so much success offensively when they had J.K. Dobbins healthy back there. The whole talk of the town was, talk of the league was, my gosh, look how good J.K. Dobbins and his Chargers offense look. I mean, look at him. Look how many yards he's going for. Well, he got injured. Yet again. Let's get some juice. They have great tackles. If you can run outside, get a guy with a little bit of speed like Omarion Hampton, if he can get outside, I think he can. You got tackles who can lead the way for him. I actually love this move for the Chargers. This is Harbaugh's DNA to a T. It does alleviate some of the pressure off of Justin Herbert. You have Ladd McConkey. They need to draft a wide receiver in this, upcoming draft. Still, they need to get some more playmakers, tight ends as well. But I do think the Omarion Hampton move makes a lot of sense. Love that one. The Broncos, I'm just sitting here going, bleep you, Denver. Because now I know Barron's going to be good. I know he's going to be good. The Steelers drafting wide receivers. They're going to be good but problematic. Broncos drafting cornerbacks or secondary members. They're going to be good. It's what they do. So they're just bolstering a strength on strength. So, yeah, man, I think the Broncos are doing a damn fine job personally of this whole rebuild. Do they need some more weapons and a running? Yes, they do. But you're making the defense even better. They're going to try and get in some slugfests, and they might slug some folks pretty hard.
I love what they did in free agency too with I'm blanking on his name, the safety out of the 49ers and Dre Greenlaw. And they brought
Hufanga?
Yeah. And Evan Ingram.
Yeah.
Is Evan Ingram like a world beater? No, not necessarily, but Sean Payton, giving him that kind of a versatile receiving toy. I like that. So I think with that new ownership group and Sean Payton and a quarterback that has to at least be treated somewhat seriously, this is probably the team in the AFC West that I'm the most frightened by. I know a lot of people would say the Chargers, but I don't know, man. That Denver squad, especially their defense, it is looking. If you told me at the end of next year that they had the best defense in the 2025 season, I wouldn't be surprised. Let's hit up the next five. Number 25, the New York Giants select Jackson Dart, the long lost Paul brother out of Ole Miss, quarterback. Don't know about that one. Number 26. James Pierce, the edge out of Tennessee. I was excited when this happened because James Pierce stylistically was never a guy that Steve Spagnuolo was going to sign off on. So that was a good development. Number 27, Malachi Starks, safety / good underrated football player out of Georgia. Of course, the Ravens just do the smart thing and take him. 28, a bit of a surprise, Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle out of Ohio State. Not a lot of people had him going in the first, mainly seen as a second-round pick. 29, the aforementioned Josh Carnley Jr. out of Oregon, the offensive tackle, going to the Commanders. Any thoughts there before we move on and finish with Buffalo and Philly?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's why I have some questions of why they went Connerly over Josh Simmons. Again, they do need a guy who can play right now. They do need a right tackle, but it does sound like Simmons – he's in the same boat as Conley. They're both left tackles. What they would have to move over either way. And if the medicals are as good as, the Chiefs have been talking about, well, he sounds like he could be ready week 1. So why did the Washington choose Connerly over Simmons? We'll find out. Those two players are going to be, connected in some shape or form, at least. If you were looking for a tackle in this draft, I think Washington fans and Chiefs fans will have their eyes pretty tightly glued to what these two guys and specifically what they specifically do throughout their careers.
We often do that as football fans. It's kind of like how Keon Coleman and Xavier Worthy are linked permanently now, right? And I think to some extent, Jahad Campbell and Josh Simmons are going to be linked because they are, for all intents and purposes, traded for one another. Let's hit up number 30. The Buffalo Bills select Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky, the corner. It's not usually the kind of corner that I think they have success with. They've been having success with like those longer guys. He is a burner. This seems like a reaction to Xavier Worthy and the speed in Kansas City, maybe. I don't know. They also whiffed on Kyer Elam because they tried to trade up and get Trent McDuffie. They were unable to do that. Famously, the Chiefs were lucky and beat them to the punch. Do they hit the bullseye this time, or is this another bust? Because it maybe feels a little early, but the speed is tantalizing.
Yeah, I know it's easy to make fun of. They got him because of Xavier Worthy. I mean, I doubt they got this cornerback specifically because of one player you would face once, maybe twice a year. I get it. They were going to be in big games, so that is somewhat understandable. But they needed a cornerback. And if they felt like he was the best guy on the board, they liked the traits. I get it. It's easy to make fun of the Bills for that, though. Like, I just want to say, oh, they let the Chiefs, get Xavier, and now they're trying to stop Xavier. Like, it just makes me laugh. But I don't hate it. Again, it all comes to what's your flavor. Like, if they think that Will Johnson from Michigan is just too injured, I mean, it has to be the medicals for the Michigan corner. He was going to be the top 10. He was going to be the first cornerback taken.
Well, he didn't run, right? So
yeah, there's question marks there, man. And so now he's in the second. So I thought they were going Will Johnson for sure. They went this way. So that leads me to believe medicals. So I can't hate the pick.
31, we talked about this earlier. The Philadelphia Eagles select Jahad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama. It's interesting. We used to think the Eagles were only going to pick edge, tackle, receiver in the first round, and they've been picking linebackers and giving big contracts to running backs. But I think the most noteworthy thing here is it is a bit frustrating that it sounds like Howie Roseman wanted this guy 10 picks earlier, and the league let him drop.
Yeah. He's a good player.
Sound familiar?
He's a good player.
Sounds a little bit too familiar to me. But that rounds out the first round. Of course, Josh Simmons, 32nd to the Chiefs. They scoop up that fifth. That maybe becomes ammo tonight. We are running longer than Charles and Minniehugh's arms, so we're going to make this last segment super quick. Best players available on the board, and we're going to run through about a dozen of those. Then we're going to do positional shopping list for each of us, our top 3 positions that we want the Chiefs to pick tonight, and then some top targets, 5 or 6 players, 3 or 4 players, guys you would like to see holding up a jersey and giving a press conference this weekend in Kansas City. Here are the best players available. This is according to ESPN, but I think you're going to see pretty similar lists out there wherever. Will Johnson, corner out of Michigan. Mike Green, the edge out of Marshall. Of course, he has those 2, never found guilty or anything, but he has those 2 sexual assault potential situations that I think cost him to slide.
Very quickly on that stuff. Either he should be off teams' boards or my pet peeve is when there are allegations like this and all of a sudden teams will be like, well, we couldn't draft him in the first. So you draft him in the third. That makes it okay now? Either he's on your board or he's off your board. I never understand the thought process of, well, we couldn't draft him there because of the allegations. So it's okay to draft him in two rounds later? Like it was my Kareem Hunt complaint from long ago, okay? Where they said, well, the Chiefs have to cut him. But then the Browns pick him up, and then the Browns are looked at as giving a guy a second chance, right? Like that whole thing just blows my mind. Like I'm totally okay if he's completely off your board because of this. I understand. I get that. I just hate when people do this, and I guarantee he gets drafted in the second or third round, and people be like, well, they're giving him a chance. They're giving him a shot. To me, that's just, it's hooey.
It's all optics. It's all PR. That's what it is. I can't say what the situation is. I haven't looked into it. I don't have all the information. I understand.
I'm saying hypothetically speaking again. I'm not saying specifically Mike Green. I'm saying in a hypothetical situation, my pet peeve is when people say, "Well, you can't draft him you can't draft in the first round because of this." Oh, but the third round's okay. It's yeah.
Yeah, an allegation should be treated seriously, but to basically just take him in the second or third round, I don't know. Is that treating the allegation seriously, or is that just, covering your ass? Right.
That's my point. That's my whole point. We don't need to get into everything.
No. Nick Emenwari, the safety from South Carolina, incredible tester, very specific player, not everybody's cup of tea. Donovan Ezareko, gosh, I can't say that name. Boston College edge. Maybe was I close enough?
Yeah, it's easy E.
Easy E. Defensive tackle Darius Alexander out of Toledo. A little bit too old for Brett Veach. I think he tends to go after the youngins. So Trevion Henderson, a very popular name in Kansas City, Ohio State running back. Siobhan Ravel, cornerback out of East Carolina, was looking like a first-round pick, then got hurt. Of course, quarterback Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. Man, I mean, he and the fam have to be sweating bullets. Elijah Arroyo out of Miami, the tight end. I really like him. I like a bunch of tight ends. Mason Taylor's also on this list. Harold Fannin, Terrence Ferguson. You're going to hear a lot of tight ends going tonight. One of the storylines for Kansas City is, are they in the market for a tight end or not? Trey Amos, Ole Miss corner. He has been a late riser in this draft. Jaden Higgins, wide receiver, Ohio State. Mason Taylor, who we mentioned. Jared Wilson, the center out of Georgia, not going to be on the Chiefs board. Shamar Turner, defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. That's something that some of the Chiefs could pick. Trey Harris, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. And the reason why we went to 16, Luther Burden III, wide receiver out of Missouri. I can't believe he's this low on their board.
It's asinine.
I'm sure he's going to be one of your guys.
They hate Missouri. They hate us. It's big coast media bias. That's what we're going with here.
It does feel a little, I don't want to say smear campaign, but I think it's been overblown, and I hate to see a kid, dragged through the mud like A.D. Mitchell was last year, and like we're kind of seeing with Luther Burden III. I don't know why this car alarm is going off, but hopefully you don't hear that. It is rather distracting, but we're going to roll through it. Positional targets. What three positions would you like to see the Chiefs walk away with tonight at 63, 66, and 95?
I will say defensive tackle specifically. Defensive line, if it's like Nick Scourton, okay, but maybe defensive tackle. I think that's where the biggest need is, but at least someone on the defensive line. That's number one. Number two, I almost want to say, depending on the player, cornerback. If there's a good cornerback, I think the Chiefs need to start investing a little higher. I'm not saying first rounders, but the 5th, 6th, 7th, that well has somewhat dried up in recent years. If you want to go back and start taking a look, it's been a little dry. We keep talking about it in the UDFA, all those guys, a little dry. That's why they had to bring in Christian Fulton, right? I think running back at 95 is where I'm starting to look. I think 95 to 133, that's where I'm looking at running back. If there's a guy they love at 95, I love it. Again, if there's a wide receiver that falls that shouldn't be there, I'm totally cool with a Trey Harris or a Luther Burden or one of those guys. I'm tasty with it, but I think defensive line to me is the most important need still for Kansas City.
For me, I'm going to rank this, man. We're really in lockstep, in unison here. Number one, no, actually, I'm going to pivot. So we're not the exact same. I'm going to go running back number one, because when it comes to protecting Patrick Holmes and getting this offense back to being a fully rounded, well-oiled machine that isn't just horizontal, but has that vertical element to it, I think an explosive running back who can really catch the ball and pass protect is along with defensive tackle, the single biggest need. And you have Chris Jones still at defensive tackle. So I'm calling it our biggest need. So one, pass catching running back who can block. They have to be able to block or they can't get on the field. Number two, defensive tackle, get Chris Jones some help, find a successor for him. Number three, I would say wide receiver, but unless they're going to move up and get Luther Burden or Jack Besh or Trey Harris, that group thins out real fast. But cornerback, I love that you mentioned that because I feel like corners actually are falling a little bit, and that's where you might get the value. So now that we have our kind of positional shopping list, who are some players you think the Chiefs should target maybe tonight?
Yeah, Scourton. Second choice would be Landon
Jackson.
Landon Jackson from Arkansas. Again, that's probably more in the second round range. Norman Lott, right? Norman Lott from Tennessee at defensive tackle. That's a name I think should be on people's radar. I still like Devin Neal, man. If that's the 95 pick, I don't hate it. I would like him better at 133, but every mock draft I did from 95 to 133 sure felt like that's where a lot of guys ended up going. So then you're left with no one. I wouldn't mind, I guess, Devin Neal at some point. So I'll say I'll keep an eye on him as well.
They could move up in between 95 and 133 and maybe get a Devin Neal or a DJ Giddens or someone or a Bashal Tootin or one of these guys that is still around in that area. For me, I have become enamored with Travion Henderson. I see a little bit of Kamara, a little bit of Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is probably the guy I see the most. One of my favorite players in the league. Well, part of that's because of his personality, but great pass protector, good rusher, and just with the ball in his hands is electric. Man, someone like that would really change the arithmetic for the Kansas City offense. Andrew Bakuba, safety from Texas. It's not necessarily the biggest need, but I think they could really use a center fielder type. They struggled to cover tight ends and running backs out there a little bit at the safety position last year. And I think they're all fantastic tacklers, smart players, tough players who really bring it, but they could use a guy with some ball skills and that can cover a little bit more ground. So I like him. I like edge Jordan Birch out of Oregon. Really wanted to pair him and Derek Harmon together. That's no longer a possibility. I like his teammate, Jamari Caldwell. The other is kind of a little bit more of a nose or a run plugger. And I like really all the tight ends. We talked about Taylor. We talked about Arroyo, but Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green could be a possibility at 95. Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon. Gunnar Helm, maybe even from Texas. I just kind of feel like as much as we, the fans, want to think about who's the guy that's going to step up and try his best to replace Travis Kelce, I imagine the Chiefs are pretty content with Jared Wiley and Noah Gray, and that they'll be maybe looking to find a blocking tight end, more of a belldozer type in the UDFA market or the later round. So those are my top targets. Let's get everybody out of here, Sterling. What's spinning for you right now?
Kenny Wayne Shepherd. I'm going to see him with my dad tonight. Little 31st birthday present for my dad. So my dad and I heading to the Uptown Theater. If you're familiar with that venue in Kansas City, one of my favorite, my dad and I are going to go ahead and see Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
Nice.
Blues legend, blues rock legend guitarist.
Love going to live music with my favorite people. It gives music kind of an extra emotional attachment. Like you know how music has this sense of recall that you think of certain times of your life or certain people or certain places. It's cool how music can do that. And I think concerts do that more than anything. For me, I'm going about 20 years back. I'm a big hip hop fan. It is Purple Haze by Cameron. one of the just like kind of a lyrical prodigy who never put it all together. It just seemed like so easy for this dude. And then this one album, he finally puts it all together, and it is just electric. They had a vinyl release that came out. I scooped it. I have been listening to it and enjoying it. He's ridiculous, but you'd love to borrow just an ounce of that Cameron confidence because
Hey, Ma, what's up? Let's ride. All right.
I like that album too. That's the previous one. Yeah, that's oh man, a lot of fun. That's all we've got, guys. So I don't forget, we will be doing a Spaces tonight after the draft. I think that's going to happen like 10:30 p.m. Central on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, from the Arrowhead Addict account. I don't know who all is going to be there. Price is going to be there. Price Carter, myself, Patrick Allen, a few other people from the AA stable. I mean, we're not horses or wrestlers, but stable sounds good. I don't know. If you guys dig Arrowhead, Sterling's face, you can't see it if you're listening to the podcast, but he's like, come on, dude. If you dig Arrowhead Addict, here's how you can help our community grow. Subscribe here on YouTube. You got to do it, please. That just is going to make sure during this long off season, this long football drought, we are going to help you stay afloat. I'm mixing metaphors here, but roll with it. If you're an audio listener, either on Spotify or Apple, please consider giving us a 5-star review, especially on Apple, where if you ask a question, we will get to it on Thursday's OG Hour with Patrick Allen. Lastly, you got to check out the mothership this weekend. Arrowheadaddict.com and Matt Connor have been just bringing it. Join us live next Friday at our new time, 3 p.m. Central here on the Arrowhead Addict channel. Until then, go Chiefs.